Okay, so let's go ahead and begin by getting into our basic posture, which is Wuji stance. And we're gonna elevate through the tops of our heads and let the tip of the tongue rest in the roof of the mouth. We're gonna drop the shoulders down onto the ribs and make a little bit of space in the armpits. The traditional thing is a sparrow's egg. And the arms are hanging naturally. We're not doing anything with our hands. The tailbone's gonna sink, like a little weight is pulling the tailbone down towards the floor. And this will cause our knees to bend slightly, like we were initiating the process of sitting down, but not really sitting yet. And then our feet should be parallel, about shoulder width apart, although like the midpoint of the traps, not like the tip of the shoulder necessarily. And our toes are pointed in the same direction. And then just for kicks, let's rock back and forth a little bit. For those of you in the certification, like you've been doing this for a while, but it's never a bad idea to check your balance. You might be doing something and not know. So when you're rocking back and forth, you'll feel how the toes have to engage and then the heels have to engage. And then there's a point in the middle where it feels like your weight is evenly distributed between the balls of the feet and the heels. And we rotate the knees out slightly to get them right over the balls of the feet. And this is our Wuji stance. So from here, we're gonna begin rotation of the head and neck. So this is the wise owl gazes backwards. Just going to a very comfortable stop. So like if you've had any of the fall season falling off the pillow syndrome stuff, don't like try to stretch, just kind of go to where there's a natural, effortless range of motion. And you might be able to feel how this actually rotates the whole spine. So you're actually twisting all the way down to the sacrum when you do this. And then the eyes will kind of gaze, and that's where some of those very small muscles and myofascial patterns engage. Good morning. And then we'll flex and extend the head. The chicken pecks the rice. And so for this, we're feeling it down to the tip of the sacrum, and then as we extend upwards, we're not crimping the neck, but we're extending the whole back, lifting through the tops of our heads. And same thing, if you've had any neck stiffness or anything like that, it's not about like stretching through it, it's about just gently kind of opening and closing a sticky door until it feels a little more mobile. There's something kind of delightful about reading literature that's like 1,000 years old, and they're talking about stuff that, you know, you realize human beings haven't really changed that much. So they're like, you know, when your door is stuck and you get frustrated and so you slam it open and shut, you know, this is like 1,000 years ago. And I was like, yeah, I did that this morning. But yeah, so they don't want you to slam your neck door open and shut. Okay, let's place our hands where the chest meets the shoulder. We're gonna pierce the palm up, rotate the palm through the whole range, and then down. And if there's like a snap that's consistent, we try to find the range of motion where it doesn't snap and play the movement there. If it pops once, then you just got a free chiropractic adjustment. change direction. Yeah, and it doesn't really, it actually doesn't matter if you come up, palm up, or down on either side. This is the part that's really interesting in the movement in a lot of ways. Because that's where you figure out how to not pop and snap those tendons. Let's go to the other side. So we'll pierce to palm up, rotate to palm down. It's certainly more natural to pierce to palm up. But if you think about like a boxer's punch, that's piercing to palm down, basically. And change direction.
Just got my free chiropractic.
Well, there you go. Yeah, there are a couple of movements that basically have become my chiropractor. We can do one in a sec just for fun. So this is not part of the Qigong or foundational exercises, but we're going to do a quick movement called the King Rises from the Throne, which is a little teaser for level 2, because that's part of the Shaolin Qigong. But what we're going to do is we start with our hands just like we're holding a ball down below our dantian, and we're going to kind of brush against the sides until our hands are palm out on the back, and then we're going to just open the chest, and then we come back to that sort of ball holding position. So we're bringing the hands behind the back, palm out, and then we extend and open the chest, and then we come back. This is called the King Rises from the Throne. Or we could say the monarch arises from the throne. Yeah, so I'm not getting it naturally, but usually if I do this, it's like, it feels great in the morning. Yeah, this is one of my favorite movements. Feels good. Okay, let's go ahead and roll the shoulder blades now. You can see how that fits in there. How are you doing?
Oh, good. So far.
I feel
the
that.
last 15 minutes since I just woke up.
Yeah. My sort of 40 minutes before this are mostly seeing the traffic getting kind of thicker and thicker as I go down the hill, then getting worried, and then I get here, and it's nice. Tell you, there was a black truck that was really tailgating me, and I finally like pulled over to the side so they could go, and there was a nice traffic snake in front of me, and they just tailgated the last person in the line of traffic, and I was like, that's so stressful. Like, why stress yourself out? Let's do flexion, extension, and rotation of the elbows and wrists. Yeah, this is really good for us modern folk type. Main thing being just to remember to let the shoulders kind of relax. It's easy to get up here when we're doing cool stuff with our hands. And you can find different angles, like maybe your thumb's a little sore, so you kind of try to massage it a little bit as you're going. No right or wrong. You can switch direction though.
Is it to be pressure on wrist and palm or just gentle?
It's a little bit of both. You can play it both ways.
Light pressure.
Yeah, so like if you get too heavy with pressure, you're actually doing something called a phalanx test, which tests for carpal tunnel. because you're closing the nerve up. And so like if you do it really hard, you'll feel it. You'll be like, ooh, that doesn't feel right. But if you do it just to the edge of discomfort, then you'll be opening up the nerve chain really well. And of course all the fascia and muscles and stuff. Let's put our hands on our low backs, and then we're gonna do our hip circles. Hula hips. There's a little cough drop on the platform that I always kind of covet. Like I look at it and I'm like, I want that cough drop. But I feel like it'd be weird if I pick something up off the ground and ate it, so I don't do it on camera. For posterity, no less. Like, yeah, all of a sudden you see me like, ooh, piece of candy. So be a little careful about which part you're rotating. It's easy to accidentally start rotating the upper part of our body. So you leave that straight, and then you just kind of cock the hips to one direction, then to the next, and then you'll find the circle again. Let's change direction. Yeah. Those of you who know me know that this is my bad side, but it's okay, because I have Qigong. You might not know how I got it. You know, you'd think it was some kind of martial arts thing, or like, no. I was trying to teach my 8-year-old daughter how to do a cartwheel. And I had the, let's say I had the skill, but no longer the conditioning at that time. And so I did it, and I felt like something go lump, lump, and then my hip was never the same again.
And how old is she now?
She's 18,
Yes.
so this was a decade ago, yeah. But she can do a cartwheel, so there you go. Let's press into the inguinal groove, and we're gonna rotate the sacrum. It's actually a valuable lesson, is you're never more in danger than when you're doing a skill set that you know how to do, but you've lost the conditioning.
I don't think I would ever try to do a cartwheel right now.
It was hubris, to be sure, for me to think that after, I did them a lot when I was in a Korean martial art called Hapkido. We would just cartwheel around constantly in that, and then we were doing like handsprings, but I was like, 15, 16 when I was doing it. So, I was almost 40 when I tried it again, and that was a bad idea. I learned a lot. Okay, let's put feet together and knees together. And we're going to rotate the knees. And change direction. And flexion and extension of the knees. And you can come up out of that. Ooh, Jane, you got good range of motion on that, don't you? That looked good.
In Washington, they go all the way down.
Ah, there you go. So when you're trying to go all the way
I
down,
can't quite go all the way down, my teacher could.
honestly, with your feet together, going all the way down is like that would be like a skill. You'd have work for that.
I did work for that.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna rotate the ankles, and we'll put the ball of the foot on the floor for this. you might be able to feel how this actually rotates your trochanter, the big femur, kind of head of the femur in your leg, in the hip socket. And change direction. And then change feet. So today we're going to be doing a full practice set of the 6 chi cultivation exercises, which is certainly one of my favorites. But we'll keep warming up for a minute just so it all times out well with some more swings. Although we won't be doing the full Tai Chi Qigong or anything like that, just kind of continuing to get our bodies moving. So why don't we spend a couple moments in the bear. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our Wuji stance. You can find your alignments, make sure everything is sort of lined up underneath the shoulders. And we're gonna do like a very short range bear. So we'll go 45, 45, rather than like, you know, trying to get as far off in either direction. So we're gonna rotate the hips and we're gonna shift the weight. Rotate and shift. And the thing to be paying attention to is the knees. If you notice that, you know, when you're going off in one direction, that the pushing knee is collapsing, you wanna fix that relatively quickly. I mean, depending on how much you're pushing off, that leg may straighten, but it's different from this, where my knees are kind of like collapsing inwards. That's very dangerous and not good for the knee. This is a nice way to warm up the legs for any activity. Also cool down. Sometimes after doing something like, I don't know, heavy squats, your legs get a lot of lactic acid buildup. So these types of gentle rotation, flexion, and extension can flush that out and help you not feel crummy. And then we'll let this kind of smooth out and it'll become the first swing. The arms are like noodles, just kind of tapping against the hips. Sometimes if I've had like a stressful day and then I'm trying to relax in the evening and read or something, I'll notice that my shoulders are tense. I'm sure I'm not alone on that. And so generally doing Qigong like late at night is gonna wake you up. But if you do the first swing, the one we're doing now, and you take the volume of it down to about here where you're barely shifting your weight. You're just rocking back and forth and your arms are literally just noodles hanging. And then you have this visualization of like letting the shoulders sink and you can feel the relaxation kind of spreading down to the floor. It has the effect of getting blood flow sort of shunting away from your upper body. And so you'll start to find that your hands get heavy, but your shoulders feel great. And if you don't do it too long, it can really help you relax at night. So usually this is like a morning exercise, but I find that tremendously useful. I'm just gonna do the first swing today to warm up. Get our bodies coordinated, get all the blood and chi flow into the hands and feet. You may feel a kind of shearing or almost like a burning sensation sometimes when you do this. And what that is it's actually your fascia lengthening. Like the fascia is the liquidy sort of connective tissue above the muscle. And so when you relax from movement, it can generate like a stretch through the fascia that's actually breaking through little densifications and stuff. So embrace that feeling. Obviously, if it feels like a sharp pain or something, it might be something else, but I think if you did this with a broken arm or something, you'd know, you know. Okay, let's go ahead and let this unspool a little bit. We'll get back into Wuji stance, so we're elevating through the tops of our heads and necks. Tip of the tongue rests on the roof of the mouth. We let the shoulders sink onto the ribs with a little bit of space in the armpits. Tailbone is going to sink down towards the ground like a plumb line. We rotate the knees out over the feet, which are parallel and facing the same direction, mostly. This is the point where people invariably be like, can I open my toes a little? Yes, you can. It's fine. Okay, so 6 Qi cultivation exercises of Liang Zhen Pu Bagua Zhang. Very simple movement, but really profound Qi movement. So we're going to start with rising and falling. So we're going to breathe in, and it's like we're picking something up, bringing it up to chest level, overturn from the low back, and then press down. And you can let your body follow the movement in whatever way feels right to you this morning. The eyes kind of gaze about 8 feet in front of you on the floor, and you let them go soft. And then a traditional Qigong kind of correction or indication is that you can think of something that makes you smile a little. And you have like a little smile on your face. But it can be like an internal smile.
From my shoulders or my elbows or my wrists?
That is a great question. So what you're doing is if you think about it, if something were too heavy to lift, what you're actually going to do is use the pump of your legs and then elevate up through the top of your head. And then when your hands overturn, your low back is kind of getting underneath the movement. And it's like you're using your whole body to press that thing down again. So the shoulders will stay nice and relaxed. That's a great question. Another thing that can be helpful is to imagine that you're like bringing a wet towel up out of water. Like you wouldn't go like, you know, you just kind of have that sense of resistance, but it wouldn't be too heavy. For those of you that lift weights, the sort of movement that you might see this training would be like a clean, where you have a bar at, you know, the hip level, and then you kind of get underneath it. And so it can be a very forceful, powerful movement, but we still don't use the shoulders. I mean, more than you have to use your shoulders to use your arms at all, I suppose. You can also play it very small. Like it doesn't have to come up to your throat. You could try just lifting to like your solar plexus area if you felt like it was making your shoulders really engage. And as we lift, we breathe in. And then as we sink, we breathe out.
Is there something that happens with your lower back when you go from down to up too?
Yes, that's a really good question. So when you're kind of the little draw here is what you're feeling. And so whenever our hands are kind of overturning, imagine if you had like a really substantial weight, your body would have to do something. That's what we're looking for, but we don't necessarily artificially generate it. So like for instance, this overturning up here, I don't know if you can see my back, but it feels to me like a little dropping and opening in my low back. And then down here, I feel like an elevation starting up in my head for this part. And then it starts that process of movement up the spine again. Okay, let's do one more. And then we're gonna leave our hands up here and we'll begin pressing forward and pulling backward. So, again, feeling how the low back initiates and even starts the movement. So it's like I have to press my low back away from my hands, like I'm starting to sit. I find a little traction in my fingertips, and then I'm drawing my abdomen to my hands. What's tricky is that we're not like leaning to do it. I'm not like going like this. I'm trying to like figure out that subtle movement where I stay rooted, but it's my Dantian and Mingmen or abdomen and back doing it. And with this one, as we press out, it feels very natural to breathe out, I think. And then as we're drawing in, it's like we're breathing into our belly and drawing something to our belly. There's definitely an element of sitting on the extension with this one. And then it's like I'm pulling myself up out of a seat or something. And our eyes will kind of trace the fingertips with these. So now we're kind of looking out beyond our fingertips, but not quite with the intensity of punching forward with angry eyes. That's its own kind of thing. You're a Bagua or a Badawan Jin person. Okay, so for our next movement, we're going to leave the hands out and let the elbows sink and drop like they're resting on a table. And we're going to move the belly button away from the fingertips. And we're going to begin circling the hands horizontally like a turntable. Yeah, that's perfect, Mom. You got it. So the belly button moves in the opposite direction of the fingertips. And what this does is it opens the ribs and the sides of the body. It's pretty cool, right?
So this is still coming from this area that we're turning and the knees are still staying.
Yeah, you're not like going like that. That would be too much. But you're definitely, I can feel there's a torsion, like right now, this knee is sort of loaded when I'm this way. And then it's like I'm transitioning to load that knee. So there's definitely movement through the legs. Without the arms, it would look like I was doing like this, maybe. Like I'm going back and forth with my... Let's change direction of the circle, just because you guys all look so good. Whoa. Yeah.
That doesn't work as easily.
Yeah, it's one of those things where changing direction really tricks your brain for a minute. It's like brushing your teeth with the wrong hand or something. It just doesn't feel right, but it's good for your brain. Really good, actually. there's been some evidence that like if you do handed things with your bad hand, it actually is Alzheimer's preventative. So I try to make a point to do both sides of everything just for that alone, because it's good. And everybody's doing a really good job not using their shoulders and their elbows. Like it's easy to kind of get up here, but you guys are doing great, keeping the elbows nice and sunken. This is one of my very favorite movements. After a while, it can feel like you're moving something with quite a bit of resistance, like kind of like, but you don't need to use muscular force to do it. You guys look great. Okay, for our next trick, we're gonna take a walking step forward. So that's the right distance is your natural sort of step. This puts us into a bladed stance or a bow stance, and you don't want to be too narrow, so you can take a second to just kind of figure out where you feel pretty balanced. And what we're going to be doing is making vertical circles. So we just did horizontal, now we're going to do vertical, and our body is going to go with the circle. So it's going to be like this. I'm like a tiger pouncing forward, then as I weight shift back, the upstroke of the circle happens. Forward and down.
Are these just all warm-up still?
No, we're doing a full Qigong set.
Oh, we are, okay.
Yeah, this is the,
I missed the divine.
sorry about that. This is the 6 Qi cultivation exercises. Although, certainly in Chinese martial arts, this could still be a, you know, like it wouldn't be uncommon that, you know, our warm-up would be like an hour and a half, you know, and then we'd start the actual forms. Because this is where you build all the power and the internal strength. The key difference between internal martial arts training and external martial arts training is that internal arts rely on structure, breath, and relaxation to generate movement patterns that can create force. And external martial arts in China rely on strength training. That's the only major difference. So like, if you're in the Shaolin temple and you're doing like a hard art, to generate this pushing power, you might do push-ups, or they do, you know, all kinds of crazy resistance training, but they still are breathing and relaxing now. If you watch Shaolin monks play, they're just doing it big. That's the only difference. I mean, I trained with a Thai boxing coach that had been doing it for 40 years by the time I got to him. And he moved like an internal martial artist. He was very relaxed, everything was smooth. You know, it was a beautiful thing to see. So I think these things all lead you to the same place if you just keep practicing, no matter what you're doing. You could be like a Qigong master at golfing for sure. Yeah. Let's switch feet, and what we're doing is we're not doing the moving away from the circle piece of it today. So don't worry about that for right now. But we are going to change the direction of the circle. So we were pouncing, now we're yielding. So as our weight's back, we're going down the circle. As our weight's forward, we're coming up the circle. Breathing in. Out. For those of you that have done Tai Chi, this will remind you of Liu or yielding, because that's what it is. But like any good yin-yang kind of thing, we've got the yielding yin phase of the movement, but then we've got the, in this case, peng or uprooting is visible in this as well. So it's one big circle. How much you choose to shift your weight is entirely based on how you feel in that moment. So you don't have to, go so weighted back that you could kick, but if you feel like it, you can. You guys look great. Yeah, Americans tend to like to have very, very high levels of instruction, and the Chinese are almost antithetical to that, where they're like, just think the number 36 and see how many times your body does it, Whereas I'm always like, no, tell me how many times to do it. Okay, so our next movement pattern is, so we've gone up, down, out, in, side to side, circle, right? So now what we're going to be doing is rotating the circle from side to side. So it's like a big steering wheel. But for this one, you might find that widening your stance slightly helps you get the full sort of movement. And one hand is resting on top of the ball, the other hand is supporting it from below on one side of your body. And then just take a second to make sure you're not leaning. Kind of bring yourself right over your feet. And then what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the hips while rotating the ball. And then we rotate the hips. There's a subtle weight shift there, which could be made big if you wanted.
It's a little bit like that 5-element one where once you get there, you go like this.
There are a lot of movements. So one of the things that's cool about the 6 chi cultivation exercises is they're like the source movement pattern for theoretically every Qigong movement that you could do. So like this could become something where you then fully stretch and open. It could be something where you are emphasizing this kind of movement, like a cloud hands pattern. It could be anything. But yeah, it's kind of cool because it's sort of like if the other Qigong are programs, this is like the source code for the programs. I talk about that like I have any idea what I'm talking about. I literally have no idea what source code. I know it's zeros and ones. But yeah, if there are any programmers in there and I'm not making sense, feel free to be like, I used to call things a parabolic movement, and then an engineer was like, I don't think you know what a parabola is. And I was like, oh. And so I stopped using that. Those moments when you realize you're not smart enough to be like talking about what you're talking about, So one of the things that you can play with is how the rotation of the hips moves through the entirety of the movement. So like we all have, I think, done John Zhuang or stake holding. Well, this is where my feet are evenly rooted, right? And then it's like I root to my right foot on the right side. And then I'm shifting my weight really subtly as I rotate. I'm even. Now I'm sort of posted over my left foot. So slowing down and like really noticing, oh, there's the standing post, and then, feeling that subtle weight shift really improves our balance as we do it. Okay, now we're going to reverse the movement. So what I would invite you all to do is just get onto any side. Now, without doing the rotation, rotate your hips and leave your hands where they are. And now they follow you. Yeah. And now you just begin the movement again. Now you've officially reversed the movement. You see how the far hand is the one on top now? Your breathing pattern can just be natural during these, but eventually you'll find that there's a rhythm of breath with this. And it just depends on how fast or how slow you want to do the movement. So you could very reasonably be breathing in. And now I'm in the center line, and then I breathe out to go to the other side. That's one natural breathing pattern. But don't try to force any breathing with it. One final thought before we do our last movement is one thing that you might think about is emphasizing which hand you're thinking about. Obviously, we're thinking about both, and the space between is what is kind of the real focus. But if you think about this as like, I'm thinking of my top hand, right? And my bottom hand is yin and supporting, or I'm thinking of my bottom hand and my top hand becomes sort of the yin supporting, really changes the flavor of this, right? Whether you're in a martial art or not, they're two different hands, believe it or not, even though they all move as one unit. So it's kind of fun to think about, like, oh, am I emphasizing my top hand and the piercing and how it lines up with my eyes? Or am I thinking about like piercing low as I do this?
Does that affect the direction of the chi?
The chi is moving in a circle with all of these movements. So in a sense, no. Like you're basically, your body's energy is going to be the same either way. But your intention and which hand you emphasize will change the expression of chi a lot. So what that means is, like, if I were to start thinking of this in a certain way, it might be that like I'm really starting to drive off this leg and lean, and it becomes like a boom kind of a movement, like double bumping palm. On the other hand, if I emphasize this part, it might become almost entirely a body movement, and my hands don't express much at all. And so those are just different ways you can manifest what we call jin, which means the expression of energy. Yeah. Okay, last movement is going to be Zhuan, or drilling. And it's very similar to pressing hands forward and backwards, except for we're going to take a walking step. And now, rather than having the hands kind of remain static, we're going to start with palms up, and we want to try to evenly rotate to palms down or even out through the whole movement. So it's this even drilling, like a drill, right? It's going and rotating as it drives forward. And just anticipating, I know when we first learned this, we started with palms down first. It's okay to do them in either. It's not like there's a correct order to, it's just a circle. So whether you start on one part of a circle or another. And the trick with these is, here's what we'll almost always do at first, is we'll like begin the movement and then all at once, voomp, and then we'll begin the movement all at once, thump. But actually that's not drilling, that's overturning at like the last second. So the drill happens evenly through the whole movement. There's a saying in the classics that the hand and the foot arrive at the same time. This is a nice place to play with that, where it's like the termination of the drill is when I've fully locked into my front weight, and vice versa. You'll see this again, and it's called pulling 9 oxen by their tails in the Shaolin Neigong. Although, just for fun, we also have a different pulling 9 oxen by their tails in the Shaolin sinew changes. So, you just have to get used to there being more than one thing with the same name in Chinese. Let's switch feet, and so we were just going from palms up to palm down. Now we'll start with our palms down, and we're gonna rotate to palms up. So, even drilling through the whole movement. There's a little moment where the expression can look like this, and this is actually one of the fundamental postures of Bagua called White Ape Offers the Fruit, which is one of my favorite names. I had a young fighter named Rob who he was learning Chinese stuff while he was still a fighter, and without telling me, he changed his fight name to the White Ape, which I adored, of course. Because he did look like a white ape, like a hairless white monkey. He was very muscular. Okay, let's go ahead and step back to the center. And then we're going to breathe in, and this is pouring the cream on top.